A student's overview of the ageless wisdom was carefully compiled from the following books by Alice A. Bailey. A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Esoteric Psychology, Volumes 1 and 2. Esoteric Healing. Esoteric Astrology. The Rays and the Initiations. Students are encouraged to download the free PDF version of this overview by following the link in the video's description, or to order a printed copy at cost from thebookpatch.com, but are advised to read the original, unabridged books in order to gain deeper insight into the ageless wisdom. Students are also invited to join our online study group at facebook.com/groups/students of the ageless wisdom. Chapter 60 Esoteric Astrology. Section 5. Esoteric Astrology. The astrological influence upon humanity. Two factors today are having a deep psychological effect upon humanity. 1. The suspense, fear and apprehension in every country are most adversely affecting the mass of the people, stimulating them astrally and, at the same time, lowering their physical vitality. 2. The impact of the higher spiritual forces upon the more intelligently inclined and mystically motivated people is producing serious and widespread trouble, breaking down protective etheric barriers, and throwing the doors wide open onto the astral plane. Such are some of the dangers of spiritual stimulation. Therefore, it is of real value to us to study the sources from which much of this so-called guidance can come. Illusion and glamour. The problem of illusion lies in the fact that it is a soul activity, and is the result of the mind aspect of all the souls in manifestation. It is the soul which is submerged in the illusion, and the soul that fails to see with clarity until such time as it has learned to pour the light of the soul through into the mind and the brain. The problem of glamour is found when the mental illusion is intensified by desire. What the theosophist calls kamamanas produces glamour. It is illusion on the astral plane. The problem of Maya is really the same as above, plus the intense activity produced when both glamour and illusion are realized on etheric levels. It is that vital, unthinking, emotional mess in which the majority of human beings seem always to live. Therefore, illusion is primarily of a mental quality and is characteristic of the attitude of mind of those people who are more intellectual than emotional. They have outgrown glamour as usually understood. It is the misunderstanding of ideas and thought forms of which they are guilty, and of misinterpretations. Glamour is astral in character, and is far more potent at this time than illusion, owing to the enormous majority of people who function astrally always. Maya is vital in character and is a quality of force. It is essentially the energy of the human being as it swings into activity through the subjective influence of mental illusion or astral glamour, or of both in combination. As the race proceeds towards a mental polarization which will be as powerful as the present astral polarization from which it is emerging, it will be found increasingly necessary to educate the race in 1. The nature of mental substance. 2. The triple purpose of the mind. A. As a medium for expressing ideas, through the construction of the needed thought forms. B. As a controlling factor in the life of the personality through right use of the creative power of thought. C. As a reflector of the higher worlds of perceptive and intuitive awareness. Creative thought is not the same as creative feeling, and this distinction is often not grasped. All that can be created in the future will be based upon the expression of ideas. This will be brought about, first of all, through thought perception, then through thought concretion, and finally through thought vitalization. It is only later that the created thought form will descend into the world of feeling and there assume the needed sensuous quality which will add color and beauty to the already constructed thought form. End of page 306. 3 basic statements. Astrology is based, curiously enough, upon illusion, for, as well you know, the zodiac is naught but the imaginary path of the sun through the heavens, and this as it appears from the standpoint of our totally insignificant planet. The sun is not, as stated, in any sign of the zodiac. It simply appears to be so as it passes between our little sphere, the Earth, and the constellations at any particular time or season. In ancient days it was believed that the Earth was the center of the solar system and that around it revolved the Sun and all the other planets. This was the exoteric knowledge and position, though not the esoteric understanding. Later, when further discoveries brought more light to the human mind, our planet was decentralized and the truth was more clearly seen, though much remains as yet to be discovered and may even be of as revolutionary a nature. From certain astrological angles, a similar process of decentralization must take place and the solar system must no longer be regarded as a point around which the zodiac revolves or through which the sun passes in its great cycle of approximately 25,000 years. Astrologers with insight may deny that this is the commonly accepted attitude. Yet, for purposes of clarity and in connection with the general public, the inference is permitted and accepted by the ignorant. Upon this theory anent the zodiac rests very largely what we call the Great Illusion, and I would have you bear this in mind as you study with me the newer approaches of this greatest and oldest of all the sciences. Astrology is a science which must be restored to its original beauty and truth before the world can gain a true perspective and a more just and accurate appreciation of the divine plan, as it is expressed at this time through the wisdom of the ages. 2. The second statement which I would make is that astrology is essentially the purest presentation of occult truth in the world at this time, because it is the science which deals with those conditioning and governing energies and forces which play through and upon the whole field of space and all that is found within that field. When this fact is grasped and the sources of those energies are better comprehended and the nature of the field of space is correctly understood, we shall then see a far wider and at the same time a more closely related horizon. The relationships between individual, planetary, systemic and cosmic entities will be grasped, and we shall then begin to live scientifically. It is this scientific living which it is the immediate purpose of astrology to bring about. At present, the position of the average believer in astrology is that he is an individual of importance, at least to himself, that he is living on that important planet, the Earth, important to humanity, and that, through astrology, he can discover his destiny and know what he ought to do. In making this comment, I do not refer to those few astrologers who possess real esoteric knowledge. They are few in number indeed, and only a handful of them are to be found practicing at this time. The modern investigator likes to believe that on him impinge and through him flow all those energies which come from the sign in which the sun finds itself at the time of his birth. He regards himself also as responsive to the forces of the various planets as they govern the houses in his horoscope, and he believes that his life trends and circumstances are thus determined. This makes him feel himself to be a factor of isolated importance. Modern interpretations fail to emphasize the importance of the rising sign, the ascendant, and this has been due to the fact that few have been as yet ready to function as souls. Small allowance has been made for the energies which play upon our planet all the time from other constellations or from the many hidden planets. Of these, the Ageless wisdom claims that there are around 70 in our solar system. I desire to give you a truer and more accurate picture. This has now become possible because group awareness, group relations and group integrity are coming to the fore in the human consciousness. As this takes place, the personality which is individual, separative and self-centered will recede increasingly into the background, and the soul, non-separative, group conscious and inclusive, will come more and more to the fore. Interest, therefore, in the individual horoscope will gradually die out, and increasingly the planetary, the systemic and the universal picture will stand out in the awareness of the individual. He will then regard himself only as an integral part of a far more important whole, and his world group will interest him far more than himself, as an individual. End of page 307. I shall not, therefore, deal with the subject of esoteric astrology from the standpoint of the horoscope at all. Universal relationships, the interplay of energies, the nature of what lies behind the great illusion, the deluding appearances of things as they are, and the destiny of our planet, of the kingdoms in nature and of humanity as a whole, these will constitute the major part of our theme. 3. This brings me to the third statement, which is so basic and fundamental that I would ask you to pause and contemplate it, even though you grasp not its full implications as yet. The ancient wisdom teaches that space is an entity. It is with the life of this entity and with the forces and energies, the impulses and the rhythms, the cycles and the times and seasons that esoteric astrology deals. Space is an entity, and the entire vault of heaven, as it has been poetically called, is the phenomenal appearance of that entity. You will note that I did not say the material appearance, but the phenomenal appearance. Speculation about the nature, the history and identity of that entity is useless and of no value. Some dim idea, providing analogy even when eluding specifications, might be gained if you will endeavor to think of the human family, the fourth kingdom in nature, as an entity, as constituting a single unit, expressing itself through the many diversified forms of man. You, as an individual, are an integral part of humanity, yet you lead your own life, you react to your own impressions, you respond to exterior influences and impacts, and in your turn you emanate influences, send forth some form of character radiation and express some quality or qualities. You thereby, and in some measure, affect your environment and those whom you contact. Yet all the while you remain part of a phenomenal entity to which we give the name of humanity. Now extend this idea to a greater phenomenal entity, the solar system. This entity is itself an integral part of a still greater life which is expressing itself through 7 solar systems, of which ours is one. If you can grasp this idea, a vague picture of a great underlying esoteric truth will emerge into your consciousness. It is the life and the influence, the radiations and emanations of this entity, and their united effect on our planetary life, the kingdoms in nature and the unfolding human civilizations, which we shall have briefly to consider. The next point for each of you to grasp is the fact that the ether of space is the field in and through which the energies from the many originating sources play. We are, therefore, concerned with the etheric body of the planet, of the solar system, and of the 7 solar systems of which our system is one, as well as with the general and vaster etheric body of the universe in which we are located. I employ the word located here with deliberation and because of the inferences to which it leads. This vaster field, as well as the smaller and more localized fields, provides the medium of transmission for all the energies which play upon and through our solar system, our planetary spheres and all forms of life upon those spheres. It forms one unbroken field of activity in constant ceaseless motion, an eternal medium for the exchange and transmission of energies. Students should never forget the law of analogy as an interpretive agency. Esotericism teaches, and modern science is rapidly arriving at the same conclusion, that underlying the physical body and its comprehensive and intricate system of nerves is a vital or etheric body which is the counterpart and the true form of the outer and tangible phenomenal aspect. It is likewise the medium for the transmission of force to all parts of the human frame and the agent of the indwelling life and consciousness. It determines and conditions the physical body, for it is itself the repository and the transmitter of energy from the various subjective aspects of man and also from the environment in which man, both inner and outer man, finds himself. The zodiac and the rays. I seek to lay the ground for a somewhat new, far more esoteric approach to the science of astrology. First, the individual etheric body is not an isolated and separated human vehicle but is, in a peculiar sense, an integral part of the etheric body of that entity which we have called the human family. This kingdom in nature, through its etheric body, is an integral part of the planetary etheric body. The planetary etheric body is not separated off from the etheric bodies of other planets but all of them in their totality, along with the etheric body of the Sun, constitute the etheric body of the solar system. This is related to the etheric bodies of the 6 solar systems which, with ours, form a cosmic unity, and into these pour energies and forces from certain great constellations. The field of space is etheric in nature and its vital body is composed of the totality of etheric bodies of all constellations, solar systems and planets which are found therein. Throughout this cosmic golden web there is a constant circulation of energies and forces, and this constitutes the scientific basis of the astrological theories. End of page 308. The second point I would make is that within the human etheric body there are to be found 7 major force centers which are in the nature of distributing agencies and electrical batteries, providing dynamic force and qualitative energy to the man. They produce definite effects upon his outer physical manifestation. Through their constant activity his quality appears, his ray tendencies begin to emerge, and his point in evolution is clearly indicated. This control of form through a subordinate of energies is an unalterable rule in the inner government of our universe and of our particular solar system, as well as in the case of individual man. There are, for instance, in our solar system, 7 sacred planets which correspond to the 7 individual force centers in man. The 7 solar systems, of which our solar system is one, and in their turn the 7 energy centers of the one to whom I have referred in my other books as the one about whom naught can be said. Much has been given in the occult books of which the average astrologer remains profoundly unaware. It is essential that he learns to think in larger wholes and to be more deeply concerned with the emanating sources and with the eternal persistent causes than with the effects of these sources upon that ephemeral creation, a human being and his temporary existence upon a most unimportant planet. As he seeks to do this, he will discover for himself the signs of the essential divinity of man, a divinity which is to be found in the infinite grasp of man's consciousness when illumined by the light of the soul and in his power to project his thought into the consciousness of those manifold lives whose energetic movements he must perforce share because his small modicum of energy is an integral part of theirs. There is one aspect of energy for which the modern astrologer makes very little allowance, and yet it is of paramount importance. This is the energy which emanates from or radiates from the earth itself. Living as all human beings do upon the surface of the earth and being, therefore, projected into the etheric body of the planet, for the reason that man stands erect, man's body is at all times bathed in the emanations and the radiations of our earth and in the integral quality of our planetary logos as he sends forth and transmits energy within his planetary environment. Astrologers have always emphasized the incoming influences and energies as they beat upon and play through our little planet, but they have omitted to take into adequate consideration the emanating qualities and forces which are the contribution of our Earth's etheric body to the larger whole. Another point which should here be noted is that the influence of the moon is purely symbolic in nature and in effect and is simply the result of ancient thought and teaching, descended to us from Lemurian times, and is not based upon any true radiation or influence. In those far-off times, antedating even Lemuria and constituting in Lemurian days simply an ancient tradition, the moon appeared to be a living vital entity. But I would have you bear definitely in mind that today the moon is nothing more than a dead form. It has no emanation and no radiation of any kind and, therefore, has no effect of any kind. The moon, from the angle of the esoteric knower, is simply an obstruction in space, an undesirable form which must someday disappear. In esoteric astrology, the effect of the moon is noted as a thought effect and as the result of a powerful and most ancient thought form. Nevertheless, the moon has no quality of her own and can transmit nothing to the earth. Let me reiterate, the moon is a dead form, it has no emanation at all. That is why the moon is spoken of in the ancient teaching as veiling either Vulcan or Uranus. This hint or inference has always been here and astrologers would do well to experiment with this suggestion I have made anent the moon and, instead of working with the moon, let them work with Vulcan when dealing with the undeveloped or average man and with Uranus when considering the highly developed man. Students would also do well to remember that the 12 constellations which constitute our particular zodiac are themselves the recipients of many streams of energy coming to them from many sources. These blend and fuse with the energy of any particular constellation and, transmuted and occultly refined, eventually find their way into our solar system. End of page 309. The following is a list, incomplete but adequate for our purposes, of the major influences which find their way from far distant sources into our planetary life and produce definite effects upon individual man and humanity as a whole. We thus have a ninefold energy impact. This is a major chart, but it should be remembered that there are other impacts of relative insignificance. 1. The constellation of the Great Bear. 2. The 7 sisters of the Pleiades. 3. Sirius, the dog star. 4. The 7 solar systems of which ours is one. 5. The 7 sacred planets of which ours is not one. 6. The 5 non-sacred planets or hidden planets. 7. The 7 planetary centers. 8. The 7 centers of force in the human etheric body. 9. The 12 zodiacal constellations. To these would be added other streams of energy which definitely play upon and affect our planetary life, such as those coming from that great star, Betelgeuse, or from Antares and other stupendous suns and solar systems which are related to the constellations of the zodiac and whose force reaches us through these constellations and not directly. Besides these, it should be remembered that technically we should also add the radiatory influence which comes direct to us from the planet, the Earth, upon which we live. Then, and only then, can you have a fairly complete analysis and picture of the energies to which the etheric body of man, conditioning the physical body which is preeminently automatic and negative in its reactions, must and does ever respond. The following attitudes and positions taken by the esoteric astrologer should also be noted. A. That the planetary influences indicate the trend of the outer life circumstances. When correctly interpreted for the average man and for the unevolved man, they can and do indicate the personality, destiny and fate. They do condition and completely control the man who has no conscious soul experience. The moment that a man becomes aware of his own soul and is endeavoring to control his own path in life, the influence of the planets, per se, definitely weakens and steadily becomes less and less. His personality chart appears inconclusive and often most inaccurate. It is the force flowing through the planets and not the force of the planets themselves which then governs and controls. The man then becomes receptive to the subtler and higher energies of the solar system and of the 12 governing constellations. B. That the sun sign, as it is called, indicates the nature of the man, physical, mental and spiritual. It holds the secret of the personality ray and of the man's responsiveness or lack of responsiveness to the soul, the real man. It indicates also the integration already achieved and the present point of unfoldment of the soul qualities, of the present available equipment, of the present life quality and of the immediately possible group relations. It indicates, from the angle of the ageless wisdom, nothing more. This is a reversal of the usual astrological position. The reason that I proffer this is that humanity is enough evolved so that the astrology of the soul will become possible before long. It constitutes, from many points of view, a reversal of normal procedure. This is both wise and necessary, and also inevitable. Astrologers will eventually be divided into 2 classes, the exoteric astrologers who will be occupied with the horoscope of the personality, and the esoteric astrologers who will be occupied with the purposes of the soul. C. That the rising sign indicates the remoter possibilities, and the spiritual goal and purpose of the immediate incarnation and of the immediate succeeding incarnations. This sign concerns itself with the struggle of the spiritual man to carry on from the point achieved so that when the life energy is temporarily exhausted and the death of the personality takes place, the man finds himself nearer the center of his life, closer to the center of his group and approaching the center of divine life as the ageless wisdom expresses it. End of page 310. End of chapter 60.